All right, students, so we're pretty much done with the circulatory system. We got to throw in a little extra in here. So I'm going to talk about the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is actually a pretty simple system, but it's incredibly important. Lymphatic vessels, they contain lymphatic fluid. It's just that simple. Lymphatic fluid is fluid from the extracellular space. Remember, arteries and veins want to keep blood in there, and the big component of blood is water, liquid. But we also have a lot of liquid inside the cells and outside the cells and outside of the blood vessels. So that is your interstitial space. It's the space between the cells. So capillary beds can't absorb all the water because we're actually bringing nutrients from the blood into that space. So the lymphatic system takes up the extra. So when you get, let's say you hurt your ankle and your ankle starts to swell up. Now, when you put your ankle up in the air, what you're doing is you're not having the veins drain the fluid out of your ankle. The fluid that built up in your ankle is in the interstitial space. So when you put your legs up in the air, now you're draining that fluid into your lymphatic system. The beauty of it is, we don't know if that inflammation came because you were cut or was an internal injury. But what happens now is because now we have the lymphatic system, which is not going to take any pathogens that might have gotten into you, any bacteria, viruses, things like that. Goes in your lymphatic system, and now your lymphatic system, as it goes through your lymph nodes, is high in white blood cells. So it's going to kill whatever pathogens there are. So it's a great way to protect ourselves. Okay, so I already mentioned interstitial fluid. Okay, so I took care of the interstitial fluid. Lymphocytes are the white blood cells. Macrophages are white blood cells that are not lymphocytes. They actually are, they were made in the bone marrow, so they're a myeloid. Our lymphocytes were made in the bone marrow, but the T lymphocytes went to our thymus and they matured. Okay. Just keep it like that. So lymphatic vessels, they're like veins, but we label them green in the books because that says they're lymphatic. Primary organs are going to be the thymus and the bone marrow because the thymus is where the T cells mature, bone marrow is where they're made. Tonsils are secondary because they have a lot of lymphocytes in there. Okay, lymph nodes, we'll talk about those when we get to it, and the spleen, a lot of lymphoid tissue in there as well. Lymph nodes get swollen when you're sick. Well, that's why doctors feel your neck and everything. They're feeling for lymph nodes to see if they are inflamed because a battle is going on between a pathogen and white blood cells to keep you nice and healthy. So as you can see right here, all the green is lymphatic vessels. Let me see. What to understand is, so distribute lymphocytes, so that is going to be our immune system. Maintain normal blood volume because of the fluid. Okay, so it actually can take that fluid back to your heart, where now your heart is going to, from your heart, it goes back into your circulatory system, your blood vessels. Some ways, but I don't want to go into too much detail on those things. Okay, so primary lymphatic, T cells, B cells, of course, secondary. Secondary is just like your tonsils, okay? It's going to be exposed to the outside, so when you breathe in, you have bacteria that goes in, it hits your tonsils fight it off, because there's a lot of white blood cells, tonsils get swollen, with tonsillitis, strep throat, things like that, and then our lymphatic system takes care of it for us. Don't worry too much about this whole thing. Just understand that there's pressure from the blood vessels and the capillaries. That pressure puts on the lymphatics. So as you can see right here, the lymphatic system is right along this capillary, so we can have fluid that can go right inside there. Okay, so this is a cell. These are your blood vessels and arteries. So all this stuff in between the cells, that's interstitial space, interstitial fluid. Okay, so there you go, lymphatic vessels. Pretty simple. Okay. Now, of course, they go from the capillary and they start to get bigger and bigger. Now, as they get bigger and bigger, what we start having in them is going to be some white blood cells. Okay, so these are our white blood cells, our lymphocytes. This is a good picture because it shows that we have arteries, which are carrying blood away from the heart, veins bringing blood to the heart, lymphatic vessels bringing lymphatic fluid, stuff from the interstitial, to the subclavian vein, That's what it dumps into, and then it goes to your heart. As you see, artery wall, thick. Vein wall, not so thick. Lymphatic vessel wall, really not very thick. Okay. Don't worry too much about superficial and deep. Remember what a trunk is. A trunk is basically like a tree trunk with all the other branches coming off of it. Okay. So as you can see right here, this will be the trunk going right up. And then we have all the tributaries that add into it. That's all you need to understand about that. So the nice thing about the trunk is, like our thoracic trunk, it runs straight up in our thoracic. And it all runs right across on the anterior portion of our spine. Then as it comes up here, it circles around and it dumps into the subclavian vein. Subclavian trunk, subclavian vein. So this goes into the left one, and this goes into the right subclavian. Okay. Easiest way to explain how it dumps is this way. I don't know how this managed to happen, but this is how it happens. Okay, this is how it works. So, the right side of the face and all the way down to, not your umbilicus, but all the way down like we are rib cage ends. So the right side of your face going all the way down to your rib cage, and the whole right arm all the way to, on the back, is going to go to your spine. So this whole section on the right side drains into the right lymphatic duct, into the right subclavian vein. Everything else, both your legs, your abdominal region, all that stuff drains into your left thoracic duct, or into your left, then goes into your left subclavian vein. Okay. The cisterna chili is where we have where the thoracic starts. So this is where it kind of breaks off. So we're in our abdominal area now. So it kind of breaks off. Now we're going to start having it break off and go down into our, we have a lot of lymphatic vessels that are in our intestines, but it's right behind. Cisterna chili is right there behind our, let me pull this right up on this girl. Easiest way to remember this is right here is our cisterna chili. This is where our stomach would be. Now, if you were to eat some really spicy chili, the chili is going to give you heartburn. So that heartburn you're going to feel right there. So heartburn is going to be in your stomach. Okay? So our stomach is going to be in pain because of chili. Cisterna chili. That's where these guys come up, and it forms the thoracic duct. Or thoracic trunk. Okay, I think we took care of the cisterna chili and all that stuff. Right lymphatic duct drains to the right subclavian. So there we go. Right? All the rest drains into the left. Okay. So lymphocytes, what do they respond to? Bacteria, viruses. Big thing. Abnormal cells, such as cancer cells. Foreign proteins, toxins, anything that is bad, anything that shouldn't be in there, our immune system, which are lymphocytes, are the primary guys. They go after it. Okay, these are our lymphocytes. We have our T cells. Okay, these ones go to the thymus where they mature. Then we have our B cells. The B means bone, so they grew in the bone marrow. Our NK cells are our natural killer cells. They will kill our own cells if they're not behaving right. So they keep everything in line. So these guys right here, these are like the hunter killers. If things aren't behaving right, they just attack. Okay, our T cells are where things get a little bit unique because T cells mature and they don't know how to recognize things that are pathogenic, and then they mount an immune response. So we have our cytotoxic, which are our killer T cells. So toxic, cyto means cell, toxic, obvious. Our helper T cells, they want to help. They're going to help maintain. They're going to help regulate. They're going to help control. They're going to mediate. They're the ones that are in charge of the immune response. However, sometimes when you get somebody to help you, they get a little carried away and they start to get in the way. So when that happens, we have a regulator T cell that tells the helper, hey, look, stay down. You're getting carried away here. All right? So the regulators control. The helpers, they initiate and they mediate the attack. The regulators make sure that the helpers and everything stays well it should. It doesn't get too carried away. Memory, they remember what attacked, so next time it shows up, they know how to kill it. Let's see. Okay, so your helpers stimulate more T cells and bring B cells into it. B cells make antibodies. All I want you to understand, what B cells do are when they get activated from a T cell, so a B cell is cruising around just being a B cell. As soon as a T cell shows up, the T cell puts the B cell in play. When he gets put in play, he becomes a plasma cell. So now he starts to make antibodies. And then the B cells can form memory cells, so when they see a foreign invader, they can attack it on their own. Okay, natural killers are just roaming around looking for anything that doesn't behave right. I think we're good on this. Cell-mediated immunity and antibody-mediated immunity. The difference is this. Cell-mediated is just going to be T cells. Okay, T cells and macrophages, there's no B cell, which means that there is no antibodies produced. Antibody-mediated means that a B cell had to be activated. So now we're going to have antibodies being produced. Okay. Now, what happens when we have an immune response? So, an immune response, now remember, a macrophage is another white blood cell. A macrophage is a big tough guy. He will actually come across something he doesn't recognize, and he will destroy it. And when he destroys it, he'll take a protein that was on the wall that he didn't recognize, and he takes that protein. That protein is an antigen. Remember, like on your red blood cells? And he presents that antigen over to a T cell, a helper T cell. He presents it. The helper T cell now recognizes that as being foreign. He says, that's in us, we need to kill it. So now he starts to produce and divide and call in for more help. So now he brings in more helper T cells, more cytotoxic T cells, and what they're going to do, along with the macrophages, is they're going to hunt for anything with that antigen. They're going to get up close, and they're going to kill it. They kill hand-to-hand. They fight hand-to-hand. Think about it like that. Okay? Then they have a memory that's always going to remember when that thing shows up, and it will kill it. Now, we also have another one where it is going to produce an antibody. So what happens with the antibody is we have a cytotoxic T cell that's kind of cruising around, kills a bacterial agent or something like that. Sometimes what happens is the T cell will activate a B cell. So in other words, a B cell sometimes actually can show an antigen over to a T cell. And the T cell says, hey, listen, you didn't go to the thymus to learn the world, so you're still babies, but you recognize this thing as being foreign. So good work, I'm going to activate you. So now that B cell gets put in play where he becomes a plasma cell. Now the B cells aren't strong enough to go and just kill hand to hand. But what they do are B cells, they start to make antibodies. So they start shooting off antibodies, which now are going to kill those invading cells or mark them for death. Okay. As far as the proliferative and all that stuff, same as with the other, we already talked about that. Lymphatic tissue, tonsils, pharyngeal tonsils, that's the top roof of your mouth. Palatine is in the back underneath right on your soft palate. Let me see, lingual is underneath your tongue. Adenoids are your nasal pharynx. Let's see. So mucosal associated lymphatic tissue, malt. If you have a chocolate malt, if you have a Whopper, a malted milk ball, that goes in your intestinal tract. So that's malt. We have mucosal associated lymphoid tissue in our intestinal tract. Malt. That's the only way I was able to remember it. Okay. Peyer's patches, don't worry about that. That's just in your large intestines. Let's see. Don't worry about all this stuff. Okay, lymph nodes, thymus gland, and spleen. These are lymphatic organs. Our thymus, we'll start off, I guess, won't go into all that. That's not making a difference. I'll show you a lymph node in a second. Okay. So I need to understand something. Our afferent vessels, they're going to bring lymphatic fluid. They're going to add it to the lymph node. The efferent vessel is going to take the lymphatic fluid away. So, remember, our lymphatic fluid could have some pathogens in them. So when it gets in here, in the medulla, what we're going to have is we're going to have a lot of T cells, and then we can have B cells. Okay? So the germinal layer is going to be this area inside. Now, what happens is, this is where we have all the action, where we have the T cells and B cells. They start to recognize things, and we have an immune response. So when it happens in the lymph nodes can swell up. So that's why when you have a cold, you can get in some of your lymph nodes. So your sublingual lymph node for mumps. Okay. So let's see here. So all these little bulges, those are lymph nodes. So as we come up here, we're going to have our cervical lymph nodes, sublingual lymph nodes, subauricular lymph nodes. Okay, so that's why we just go and we touch all around here to feel the lymph nodes. Let me go for physical. This kind of shows a little bit better. I'm not going to go into it too much, so I get too carried away. Ciliary lymph nodes, axilla. This is a problem because since our lymphatic tissue, so the breasts have a lot of lymphatic tissue and the breasts react to several different hormones. So because they change like that, the chances of cancer growing can happen. So if we get breast cancer and it starts to grow and it gets into one of these lymph nodes, here's where it's dangerous. If it gets into a lymphatic vessel, all it has to do is go this far and it dumps right into the subclavian vein. Goes right to the heart and now it's metastatic. So it doesn't have to travel through too many lymph nodes. So that's why breast cancer is so dangerous. Inguinal nodes. More inguinal nodes. Let's see, mesenteric. Don't worry about that. Pretty obvious, so digestive tract. Okay, let's talk about thymus. So our thymus is going to be right above our heart, superficial, so it's right under our mediastinum, right? Right, left lobe, I don't care if you know that stuff. Split it open, you can actually see it's going to have all of the, just has a whole bunch of T cells and they're maturing. They're learning to differentiate, to recognize things that are not part of the body. That's all. Okay, so now the spleen. So the spleen is going to be right over here. The spleen sits on our left side. It has a lot of red blood cells in there. That's where red blood cells get destroyed. And then it's going to have our red pulp and white pulp. The white pulp is the lymphatic stuff. Okay, so here's the spleen. Okay, so white is where our lymphoid nodules come from. They respond to antigens and pathogens in the blood. That's all you need to understand there. Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, I think that's everything.